welcoming introductions. So we have a small crowd today, so why don't we start to my graduates?
Michael Barr, Mayor of King City.
Joe Genter, Mayor of Salinas.
Cheryl County, Homeless Liaison, Salinas City Elementary School District.
Also Jimenez, Health Department, Monterey County.
Enrique Guerrera, Health and Human Services Agency, San Pedro County.
Gloria Medina, Monterey County Social Services.
Nick Erickson, representing the Faith Community.
Dave Pacheco, Seaside City Council.
Dan Baldwin, Community Foundation. Kurt Shockey, BTC. Elliot Robinson, Coalition of Homeless Services Providers.
Nicole Sakigara, Coalition of Homeless Services Providers.
Over here with Jack.
Jack Murphy, I do HVAC for BTC.
How do we jump over here? This side?
Erica Barker, Field Representative for Assembly Member Markstone.
Michael Liston, Behavioral Health.
Javier Gomez, Supervisor of Lab.
Ana Velasquez with Senator Ana Caballero's office.
Ricardo Estrada with Assemblymember Robert Rivas' office.
Thank you. Re-listed office, thank you all for being here. Folks want to introduce yourself?
Grace Bonilla, Community Homeless Solutions.
Maria Lee, Canary Gathering Cougars.
Gina Alvarez Luciso.
CJ Ramos, City of Salinas.
All right, now we'll jump to this side.
Drew Carlos, Salinas, Salinas, Ricardo.
Roxanne Wilson, the Homeless Coalition.
Kyle Cooper, California Homeless Union.
Rita Acosta, Salinas Homeless Union, and Voice of People, the Homeless in Salinas.
Alicia Poole, President of the Santa Cruz Chapter of the California Homeless Union.
Stacey Azlipa Perkins, Executive Director, Gather for Women.
Dave Pratt, County of Monterey.
Erin Iverson, Sacramento Homeless Union.
Krista Sanchez, the President of Sacramento Homeless Union, and we are a national union, all of us.
Eddie Rios, the Sacramento Homeless Union.
Derek Free, Homeless Coalition.
Anyone else? May I walk in? We got everybody?
Yeah, Wes, White, Salinas.
Oh, yeah, you always like to be last.
Yeah, right. Well, all right. Yeah, I'll go with that.
Luis, okay. Yes.
One more.
Introduce yourself, sir.
Rodrigo Torres, Community Homeless Solutions.
All right, thank you. Do we have any additions or modifications to the agenda? Mr. Robinson?
Not that I know of, if everyone else wants to propose something, so we can take it up as Member Council.
Yes. Suggestion?
Since I didn't leave early, the request from San Benito, action item.
Oh, from the bottom? Okay. All right.
In case I
Okay. We'll try to take that one first because Mayor Rivera has to leave a little early with the request from San Benito County to host a future meeting. We'll bump that up to the top after the consent agenda. And just for the agenda, if we could number the items so it's easier to refer to them. And then the packets, if we could number those so they could correspond with the items on the agenda, makes it easier to flip those items whenever on a particular action agenda item to consider. Okay, moving on to public comment for items not on today's agenda, a couple of minutes. We have some guests from the Homeless Union and I want to welcome those who come from Santa Cruz County and Sacramento County. Always welcome here in Monterey County, so thank you for coming down and being a voice for our most vulnerable residents in our communities. Who wants to start?
Who would you like to start with?
Oh, we'll go Crystal.
Oh, my. Do I go up there?
Oh, you can just stand.
up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where would you like?
All right, this is new to me. Sacramento is a lot bigger and a lot more people. Okay, so I'm going to start out. As sworn officers, we must do what is morally and ethically right. If your true intentions are for homeless solutions, then listen to all of the constituents, especially those that you're making decisions for. The realities of sweeps. Are they just to clean? If so, can we allow the impacted to have the tools to aid in these duties? Sweep people, or sweep trash, not people. Sweeps are intentionally disabling unhoused as they only get like 72 hours to get things moved. They're constantly moving. They can't get anywhere. They can't get a job. They can't take the time to figure out what's going on. Systemic racism and broken policies is what's creating this homeless crisis. We need to stop classifying, discriminating, and stereotyping all homeless. Many issues contribute to being outside, including abuse, evictions, natural disasters, lack of preventative services, addiction, loss of spouse or family members, tickets, hospital bills. Most families are only $400 away from being homeless. Let's evaluate sweeps. So loss of documents, survival gear, transportation, food, constantly moving equals the inability for people to progress. Jobs, wraparound services, and getting off the streets. We and they share your concerns for the environment, public health, and safety. They don't want to be outside, criminalized and freezing. Solutions include putting yourselves in their shoes. You wouldn't want to be in a room with 100 others with all different issues. You wouldn't want someone coming into your neighborhood and taking everything from you. You wouldn't want to be stereotyped, discriminated against because you didn't have a home. You wouldn't want to starve and face freezing to death. And you wouldn't want to be unheard by those who are elected to support and represent you. I feel that honestly the system really needs to be completely uprooted. The systems are broken all the way down. It's keeping the homeless down and it's putting people who are poor farther down. So we recently just had the no-fault eviction in Sacramento. Our council didn't pass it. So we have families that are going on the streets right now, including children and seniors. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Next person? We're on 2 minutes each, so.
My name's Alicia Cole from Santa Cruz. I didn't write anything down, but the reality is that it's cruel and unusual punishment to rip people's belongings out from underneath them frequently and make them replace their survival gear. I work with several organizations and we work towards replacing that gear, and it's a crisis. In addition, another thing that is hurting people is putting restrictions on how long they can have their tent up. In cities all across the area right now, they're trying to say that people can only erect their tent and have the right to sleep and be sheltered from the elements at nighttime. And we know that we have a lot of disabled people. I mean, one of our quickest growing class of homeless people is elderly and disabled. And they need to rest. A lot of them are sick. They have issues. They need to have a tent in order to keep their supplies, their medications. And we really need to find dignified, heartfelt, compassionate solutions rather than work on enforcement tactics. Right now, in most cities, we lack the resources to help people. And so we need to really work on that instead of criminalizing people for trying to survive. And so I really, really want you to understand that. I've seen people die. Last Sunday, we had a homeless woman die on Cedar Street in the streets of Santa Cruz. And had she been able to have adequate shelter or even just a tent and be left alone to rest and resources to come to her, she might not have died. And so it's human life at stake here, and I really want you guys to all consider that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we express our condolences for the loss of that person. Anyone else?
Rita Costa for Salinas. I just wanted to say the suites in Salinas, I know they're needed to help keep the areas clean, but also there's areas that people are working together to keep their space clean, and it is still hard having the suite come in and having us move out. Sherwood Park residents are not at the park, but they're still there all day. They didn't want their property with them in the daytime, but where are we supposed to put it? We sleep across the street. We have people complaining because we keep crossing the street back and forth. There's no other way but to cross the street to get to that empty lot. Nobody leaves their things there. We're doing the 7 to 7, but again, it does take a toll on a person. I've been in and out of the hospital myself, having surgeries and everything, and to come out of the hospital and not have a place to rest does take a toll. You know, and Medi-Cal and stuff wouldn't pay for my, can't even think right now, just, for my antibiotics or anything like that. So again, it was hard. In 2 days, I go back to the hospital and then schedule another surgery. But being outside and being able to take care of myself is very hard. And again, the suites, I just lost all my property yesterday, not to a suite, but just to, if it's on wheels, it's easy to roll, you know, and when it's in a cart, nobody wants to push the shopping cart. So when people say it's easy for us, it is not easy pushing that cart. Nobody stole my stuff before, and I've been in it, homeless off and on. I had all my stuff on wheels, and every single thing of mine got taken yesterday. So again, I'm saying it's taking a toll on the people. People are getting sick and dying out here. We do need help, and we are trying to work with the city, but we also need our city to work with us. Salinas Police Department, very hard on us. We're not criminals. City of Salinas, we're not criminals. We're still part of the community. We would just like respect You know, a lot of people have income, no affordable housing. No affordable housing and no affordable housing. You know, just want to say, we need help and we need help from our city.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Yeah, my name is Betty Rios, I'm from Sacramento. About the street systems, it does need to stop, but I'm a domestic violence survivor right now. I went and done your guys' program, like they have us going to the shelter house. It does not work, because they let my ex know where I was, and I didn't feel safe there no more. He threatened me to kill me, everything. They put us in the same home, the same house. The police broke my arm and everything. It was not right for the guys to do that. I have people that is still in my group is going to have a heart maker put in them, one has a heart maker taken out of them, one is and has multiple hernias, and they never help them guys. They need to make a change and get the ones out off the street or disabled elders out of there first, and into homes.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for joining us.
I can't count this many times. I've had the police take things out of my hands. They've taken my tent out of my hands and thrown it in the garbage. You know what I mean? Multiple times. I mean, they've come with this big old claw and they just scoop all of our stuff up. And you know, another thing is when you move, it creates trash. So when they're helping us move every 72 hours or whatever, it's going to create trash. And then we don't have the receptacles to put them in. We don't have the wherewithal to do anything with the trash. Where are we supposed to put it? We don't have the tools. We don't have the garbage cans. And if we did have the garbage cans, like they don't come and empty them like they do for, you know what I mean? Like we're a lot of us do what we can to do that, but they put us in a position where, hey, we got to move in 72 hours, so why should, you know? So it kind of gets, it falls on that, and you know, we just have to keep moving, keep creating trash, and then pretty soon nobody cares anymore. Like, and we're still out there though. We're still out there. There's a lot of us that are trying to keep things clean, and I wouldn't do that even if I had a house. I would do the same things. Clean my yard and you know, have same things I do at my tent. Same things. You know what I mean? This is life. You know? And that's all I want to say. Like, you know, the police just make it that much harder. You know? Just make it that much harder.
Thank you very much for your comments, ma'am. Anyone else would like to speak on public comments now on today's agenda?
Wes Weiss, Salinas, co-president of the Salinas Monterey Homeless Union. Basically, we are here trying to ask for some kind of relief from this body. You know, the Leadership Council kind of is a continuum of care. And, you know, I think somebody needs to pick up the ball and actually put us in a better, more, you know, fulfill your role. Your mission is to take care of these people. And, you know, constantly 3-4 times a week, the same people are getting swept and everything is theft. And it's survival gear. I mean, without shelter, what are you going to do? I mean, there's no shelter being offered. And like Rita says, you know, if you can't provide a home, stop taking the one they're making for themselves. And you know, it's too much. It's way too much. And there's a whole sweep industrial complex going on where the police are getting paid. The Smith & Enright is getting paid. You know, they're a landscaping company, but they specialize in the sweeps. We have other landscaping companies now doing landscaping. And then, you know, the dump is getting paid. Everybody else is getting paid and is being paid by human suffering. And nobody's paying attention. No, well, not my job, not my responsibility. I can't control the city of Salinas. They're your partner. What kind of game are we going toward? What is our goal? Because this is actually hurting a lot more than it's helping. And it's other cities too, but I see it most directly in Salinas because that's where I live. It's the biggest, it's the county seat. It's got 150,000 people in it. It's real easy to just glaze over. Right now, Caltrans is taking up some people from underneath the bridge. But is there a notice? No. Did they follow the law? No. But does it matter? No. Obviously, everybody's got dirty hands. Who's going to wash theirs? You know, I mean, step up, man, because people are dying outside. It's getting colder. It should already be colder. The climate change, of course, doesn't exist. So, you know, here we are. I mean, people are dying outside. And if you don't want to, if you don't have the funds, if people are signing up for cars, that should be an immunity from being swept. Right there. Plain and simple, case managed. Then you can change people's behavior if you accept them and give them permission to be somewhere.
Thank you, Wes. Anyone else on any item on today's agenda?
Can I say one more thing, please?
Very quickly, please.
I was just wanted to say, it's, oh, I lose my thought, but, keeping telling people that they can't belong here or there, we always ask, if you don't want us here, where do you want us to go? There is no place for people to go. And to be told over and over again, you can't be here, and then you ask where, they're like, anywhere but here. But if you can't tell a person where to go, how can you tell them to leave? If you can't offer them housing, how are you gonna take their tent? It gets really, really hard, and again, I don't just speak for myself because everybody needs there's so many homeless out here. There's some that choose to be out there, but there's ones that are trying to help themselves, and everybody gets still treated as if they're doing something wrong. Just remember, take into consideration, there is no place for people. That shelter is not gonna house everybody and put them in there. We need a place to be, we need a property, rules run, tent community, something. But being told and shuffled around like cattle isn't working. It's not working.
Thank you very much. Very quickly.
Very quickly, so on behalf of the California Homeless Union and the National Union of the Homeless, we're asking you all to help us. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we'll be part of continued conversations. Our board's here to listen. It's not on the agenda today, but we hope to keep having conversations in response to your concerns and others.
Thank you.
All right, so we're gonna move on to our consent agenda. These are the minutes for September 4th and October 23rd committees minutes. Just need a motion on that. Motion to approve. Motion. Moved by Mayor Rivera, second by Mayor Dante. Any comments on the minutes? Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed or abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to the request from San Benito County to host a future meeting. In that location, does staff want to report on that?
Let me just pass it over to our member Enrique. Maybe request.
So what we would like is to host a future meeting in San Benito County. As you guys all know, all leadership meetings and all coalition board meetings take place around this area. So we feel that having a meeting, whether it's annually or whenever it's planned, says a lot also to support San Benito County, and at the same time to learn a little bit of other services that we offer for a homeless community. And also our offices are right next to the shelter. It will give you the opportunity to perhaps do a quick shelter, so we wanted to make that offer.
Okay.
Make a motion, schedule a meeting in San Benito County,
Yes, sir.
preferably the first one of next year if possible.
So perhaps January? January look good for you?
Yeah, that's fine.
So it'll be a meeting and then a tour of your facility there, which is adjacent to your office. Just hopefully we get a commitment from all our board, as many of us get there as possible, have a forum, and show some, our respect and support for San Benito County's efforts as partners in this COC. I think we should all try to plan it to be there, even if it drives a little longer, but I'll certainly commit to attend that meeting.
Thank you, appreciate it.
What's the date?
It's usually the third, fourth Wednesday in the month, so whatever the fourth Wednesday of January is.
22nd.
22nd?
22nd.
Okay. Keep that as a tentative date unless something else changes. So there's a motion, second, any other public discussion on this?
I'm actually just going to add, the
Yes.
second meeting will probably be a pretty important meeting, just because that's right around the time frame of the initial application for HHAP funds. So, forum will be important.
All right. There's a motion, second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Great, motion carries unanimously, thank you for that. Moving on to the COC governance charter and standards updates.
Okay, I'm going to pass this over to Roxanne very quickly, but just to say that we've engaged with Home Base, which is probably the largest technical assistance provider in California, to re-examine our governance charter and actually establish some written standards for continuum of care. And we've scheduled some interviews, and we're also trying to schedule a few focus groups, and I'm going to pass it off to Roxanne.
My class is back on
So we have already been through the first couple of stages where they collect all of the existing documents, started analyzing those documents and finding gaps in our governance charter and our written standards. They've also reached out to numerous community partners that we have given contact information for so they can be interviewed. They're going to be drafting, well, they're actually currently in the drafting stage. And in January, on January 6th, we are going to have a focus group meeting here. And I believe that everyone is confirmed who was invited. It's a very small group. I think we only had 20 seats. So that's where we're at. It's supposed to be completed by January 31st, just after our leadership council meeting. So we wouldn't be able to bring it to you for approval until March.
And I would just add, when it comes back to the board, it's not, obviously the board will have opportunity to say this, that, and other thing. In terms of just getting the documents written and the recommendations prepared, we've kind of worked with a limited set of people, understanding that this is an inclusive body and we want to have everyone included, but to get the product done quickly, we wanted to get recommendations, bring it back to this body for review, edits, comments if necessary, and then adoption.
Any questions on this item? Information item? Other comments? Okay, thank you for that report, for the update. Looking forward to seeing this in March again. Moving on to the HAP discussion, allocation requirements and timeline. This is the new round of state funding after the HEAP funding we got this current fiscal year.
And this is the most meaty kind of section of the agenda, so this is where I think we have to pay attention. This is a state presentation. I'm going to skip through some parts. But basically it includes a program overview, important dates, and eligible applicants. There's more detail on the presentation. Behind the presentation, if you look at the program guidance, it starts on page 49 of your agenda packet. The PowerPoint is also in your agenda packet. Just as overview, it was signed into law on July 31st. If you want to see the enabling legislation, it's AB 101. It's designed to provide jurisdictions with one-time grant funds to address support regional coordination and expand or develop capacity to address immediate homeless challenges. And spending must be informed by a best practices framework. I just want to point out when they say one time, it is one-time funding, and the amounts of money you look at have a 5-year expenditure window, which we'll get to more later. So that program guidance was published in November. In October, the application map and instructions, they have not been published yet, I don't believe, but we expect them to be imminent. So once they come out, they'll be on a short time frame to actually create the application. The release of the notice, the NOFA, will be somewhere in the November to December time frame, but our applications will be due February 15th, and that's why I say that January meeting will be important to have in quorum. My assumption is it's going to be a lot like HEAP, where we put together an application, but it is modifiable as we go along. HEAP awards are expected to be made by April 1st, and then the next date is a ways out, which is when the funds have to be contractually obligated. So we can act quickly, or we can take our time. For the counties, applicant or pots of money in both San Benito and Monterey County will be administering a pot of money, and Continuum of Care will be administering a pot of money. Counties, I'll get to it later, what the expenditure patterns are, but we have to have a certain amount obligated by May 31st, 2023, and program funds must be fully expended by June 30th, 2025. So when you think about the funding, don't think about it as an annual pot, but think of it as a 5-year pot. So if you want to turn it into an annual number, divide everything over the future by 5. These are the total pots of money. Roughly, I'm going to give rough numbers because I don't want to get too exact until it comes out, but my assumption is somewhere in the $3+ million range will come to Continuum, something in the $3 million range will come to Monterey County, and something in the roughly $300,000 to $400,000 range will go to San Benito County. Now, again, keep in mind, there is a 5-year expenditure window behind this, and it's unclear, because it's an act of the legislature, and it's always hard to predict exactly what legislatures will do. Are there future one-time pots of money that come our way? So at this point, I would recommend.
And I just wanted to point out that it was significant because initially in the governor's budget proposal, he had proposed to move away from funding from the Continuum of Cares. He wanted to put more to the cities and the counties, and he got some pushback, which resulted in this $190 million as part of a compromise in the budget come last June.
So may I ask Commissioner Elliott, we'll go back to so then will the city and the counties have opportunities to re-grant that money to agencies doing the work, or how does that get utilized?
So there's a question that comes beforehand where the jurisdictions, the counties, we don't have a city that's large enough to get a city allocation. So we only fit in the continuum of care and the county allocation. There was an opportunity, it still exists, for the counties, or I suppose the continuum, although they talk more about counties redirecting the funds to the continuum. My understanding from both jurisdictions is that they are not opting to redirect the money to the continuum, which is fine. We just have to work together to partner. It's probably the big message.
Can they redirect money to Northeast Place?
Yes. Yeah.
That was really my question.
And then follow up. And so a smaller city, if they had a program in place that met the criteria, would we basically be applying to continuing care to the county?
Yes.
Okay.
Both.
Thank you.
I mean, I'll get to some of those questions later. At least there'll be recommendations on my part, not action, but discussion right now. I don't think I have to go into who the eligible applicants are. It's the 2 counties and the coalition for the continuing care. This just describes who the administrative entities are. We've already established that it's the 2 counties and continuing care are the administrative entities. Eligible uses, and what the state's been doing, and similar to HEAP, this is a list of eligible uses, but they also clarify that it's not an exhaustive list of eligible uses. My experience is that with reasonable integrity and reasonability, lots of things are possible, but that important piece will be reasonable integrity and then best practices. The eligible uses that they've identified are rapid rehousing, rental assistance and rapid rehousing for some of the shelter programs. Some of the funds can be used to support an operational reserve. Landlord incentives to support landlords to provide housing to our community. Outreach and coordination, including employment systems. System support to create regional partnerships. Delivery of permanent housing. Innovative solutions like motel/hotel conversions. And in fact, a number of us were at the CSAC Legal Cities Conference, was that last week, the week before, where they really highlighted the cost effectiveness of pursuing hotel-motel conversions. Other areas, prevention and shelter diversion to permanent housing. I will say we have a dearth of diversion funds in our community, so that's kind of an interesting thing. And then finally, new navigation centers and emergency shelters. Best practices include but are not limited to housing first, permanent supportive housing, trauma-informed care, harm reduction, landlord engagement, housing navigation. Solutions can be innovative, and we have a process that the Homeless Coordinating Financial Council convenes where they have regular meetings with all the continuums and all the partners to go over solutions and strategies. So back, up to intelligible uses. So we must spend at least 8% each of us on our allocations for homeless youth populations. We can use up to 5% of our allocation on a strategic homelessness plan and/or infrastructure development to support coordinated entry systems and homeless management information systems. And Grants may use up to 7% of their allocation for administrative costs to administer its program allocation. Pretty specific ineligible uses. They're very explicit this round that grantees shall not supplant existing local funds for homeless housing, assistance, or prevention. Grantees cannot replace local funds that are committed to an existing program for developing homeless assistance programs. Grantees shall not fund projects or services that are not in compliance with the Housing First policy, and we can't reimburse any activities prior to July 1st, 2019. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about Housing First policy. We had on the table the definition of Housing First policies, which will have to define some of our thinking. And just to read what the core components of Housing First are. 1, tenant screening and selection practices that promote accepting applicants regardless of their sobriety or use of substances, completion of treatment, or participation in services. Applicants are not rejected on the basis of poor credit or financial history, poor or lack of rental history, criminal convictions unrelated to tenancy, or behaviors that indicate a lack of housing readiness. Acceptance of referrals directly from shelters, street outreach drop-in centers, and other parts of crisis response systems frequented by vulnerable people experiencing homelessness. 4, supportive services that emphasize engagement and problem solving over therapeutic goals and service plans that are highly tenant-driven without predetermined goals. 5, participation in services or program compliance is not a condition of permanent housing tenancy. 6, tenants have a lease and all the rights and responsibilities of tenancy as outlined in California's civil health and safety and government codes. 7, the use of alcohol or drugs in and of itself without other lease violations is not a reason for eviction. 8, in communities with coordinated assessment and entry systems, such as ours, incentives for funding to promote tenant selection coordinated assessment and entry systems, incentives for funding to promote tenant selection plans for supportive housing that prioritize eligible tenants based on criteria other than first come, first served, including but not limited to the duration or chronicity of homelessness, vulnerability to early mortality, or high utilization of crisis services. Prioritization may include triage tools developed through local data to identify high-cost, high-needs homeless residents. 9, case managers and service coordinators who are trained in and actively employ evidence-based practices for client engagement, including but not limited to motivational interviewing and client-centered counseling. 10, services are informed by a harm reductions philosophy that recognizes drug and alcohol use and addiction as a part of tenants' lives, where tenants are engaged in non-judgmental communication regarding drug and alcohol use, and where tenants are offered education regarding how to avoid risky behaviors and engage in safe practices, as well as connected to evidence-based treatment if the tenant so chooses. And finally, 11, the project and specific apartment may include special physical features that accommodate disabilities, reduce harm, and promote health and community and independence among tenants. So the Housing First principles are a very important part of what we'll have to structurally plan around our program service delivery when we get to the point of obligating the contracts. Also, the use of the coordinated entry system will be an important element.
Mayor, there's a question.
Thank you. Number 8 was very interesting to me because it seemed like it gave us some more flexibility to help really meet the most pressing needs.
Sure. Well, the way the coordinated assessment system works, and we utilize the coordinated assessment system in our continuum of care. You'll hear it referred to oftentimes as CARS, or sometimes you'll hear computer system home. That's our coordinated entry system, and what it does for organizations that are continuum of care funded, for their housing programs, they have to take the most vulnerable referral from CARS first, not first come, first served. There's some variations in it. You know, an example would be a victim of domestic violence in a program would have very high priority. So there are lots of nuances to the system, but it is one of our policies that, as we go through the governance rewrite, will also improve how that's articulated.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Okay. Notices. So a couple things, just to let you know. One of the issues that came up was the ability to use the 2017 point in time count as opposed to the 2019 point in count. That was a big conversation here. Their criteria for using the 2017 count was not something that we would qualify for. It was basically you dramatically changed your processes for conducting the census. You did it in coordination with HUD. We used largely the same processes and we did not coordinate with HUD in that. So the ability to use the 27 point in time count would not apply to us in that regard. And then I also mentioned the notice of intent to redirect an HHAP program allocation. Expenditure deadlines, June 30, 2025 is when all the funds have to be spent. But I want to talk about a little bit about the contractual obligations. So by May 31st, 2023, counties have to have 100% of their allocation obligated, or in other words, contracted. For COCs in large cities, it has to be 50% of the program allocation allocated by that amount. And I doubt they have the details in the next chart, but basically, if, say, a county only obligated 90% of the allocation by 2023, then the 10% would revert to the COC. With COCs, if we don't have 50% obligated, so if we only have 40% obligated by May 31st, 2023, 10% of our obligation would be revert to the state unless we have basically a corrective action plan as a strategy. So that gives us time to actually get the contracts done and to plan what we're doing, although the application date of February 15 says we have to have a rough structure for it, and we have to prepare our actual application. This is just more examples of how they do the expenditure requirements. So, the NOFA will be released within 10 days of HUD publishing the final 2019 point in time count, which confuses me because I've seen lots of charts presented out there with the 2019 point in time counts, but I guess they're not certified by HUD yet, so we're just waiting for that to occur. There's a streamlined process to quickly and efficiently award and distributing funds, not unlike HEAP. Once we got our application in, we got a really large check that is currently sitting in an interest-bearing account, earning a decent amount of interest, actually, that at the future meeting we'll have to figure out how we're spending that, because we also have to spend whatever interest earnings accrued by the end of the period. Applications will be done, as they come in, and technical assistance will be provided to ensure applications are submitted. There'll be an online application. This is so interesting stuff. It's online, although you have to do it in one sitting, which seems very painful. Okay. So what do we need? We need narrative, budget, letters of support, redirection of funds documentation, which we won't be doing, an authorized signature form, and our AE data record. So just going through that, this first bullet is a little bit of a mystery. Eligible applicants shall use the HUD longitudinal system analysis to inform our decision making. That is, when I looked at it, it's a one-line table that gives almost no information. So we have a question into the Homeless Coordinating and Financing Council to ask, what do you mean by that? I'm sure that information will come out. The next piece, I think, kind of speaks to what an important element will be, which is how do we work together it doesn't have to be one application, but to the extent it's coordinated and we do it together, I think it'll be a stronger statement of our coordination and ability to work together. So this just says we'll share the LSA, that's easy to do, but more important is how we work together. We'll all have to submit that LSA with our application. Regional coordination, we'll have to describe our coordinated entry system, which I just did a little bit of. We'll have to, as COCs, will identify more barriers or challenges and plans to address them within our coordinated entry system. And the county will have to describe how you're interfacing with the continuum of care policies, particularly the coordinated entry system, including the prioritization criteria. We'll have to describe how we're coordinated together to identify the share of the regional need to address homelessness, which typically, from a regional basis, which Monterey, San Benito, looking at that kind of macro level, we do based on important town count. That's how we've handled the HEAP plan. And I assume that would be the same. And from the county perspective, San Benito County will have their piece. Monterey will have their piece, I assume, although we have to sort out how we split up the point in time count, which covers both counties. That will have to be a technical assistance question. And then we'll also have to discuss our sustainable and long-term solutions to the homeless issue, because this is one kind of funding. We'll have to describe existing programs and resources specific to addressing homelessness, and so that will be a project that we'll all have to engage. Certainly it's not hard to pick out our HUD COC money and our HEAP money, and our CASH money, and our ESG money. But there are also a number of other programs that are probably worth considering. I mean, one of the prime examples for me would be, and I think it comes up later, the Gallows Housing Support Program that most counties operate. Honestly, I think programs like the Transitional Housing Plus program and child welfare, kind of fascinating programs that probably very few of us around the table even know about, that support youth homelessness. So we'll have to kind of have a process to tease out what are homeless service-related dollars that are budgeted for our system. The more inclusive, the better, but it's close to impossible to get fully inclusive. We'll have to describe describe the partners who are working on HAP projects. This list has the minimal list of partners that should be included. And I just want to preface as I go through this list, this also becomes something that we should consider as we work with Home Base on our governance charter. Are there members who should be at this table who we want to include in that table? And that I would also recommend for. We may not have time in the January agenda, but we'll have to contemplate how we look at that. Partners at a minimum should include people with lived experience, providers, youth programs, healthcare, law enforcement, educators, faith-based organizations, other cities, behavioral health, DA and parole agents, workforce development, and public housing authorities. If I look at this list, kind of the missing places are, we have a spot on our board for people with experience. We'll have to fill that spot. That's currently part of our governance charter. Law enforcement, I do not believe is part of our governance charter. DA, workforce development isn't. And to have a specific youth representative is also probably very valuable. So we have most of that, which is the good news.
Elliot, were they specific on how to include those partners in the proposal, or for a formal MOU or agreement with it? Did you speak to them?
No, it's not specific yet. I think you can meet it a few ways. One is kind of to reach out to folks. In fact, if I go back, one of the things they say, it's in the guidance, that if you don't have it right now, don't worry, but have a plan to make sure that they're all included in your process. So this is their list of funding that we do need to include in our budget. So they do include the Cal's Housing Support Program, No Place Like Home. And I just would recommend that we become as inclusive as is reasonable. At times, in my history, I was asked, how much money do you put in homeless services? Wow, costs, food stamps, what is it? But I think we would have to be relatively specific to those programs specifically related to homeless services. So that our partners have to put together the numbers, don't go crazy. We'll have to do an overview of the plan and efforts to address homelessness, using elements from the strategic plan. Right now, our strategic plan is, out of date with an update, and we will be working towards ideally having the plan completely rewritten by June, but not by April. We'll have to identify measurable goals.
So I'm sorry to interrupt, is the strategic plan the leading all plan?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we actually have some requests out to people who do that kind of writing right now to provide us with quotes so we can start moving forward on having that rewritten. Is there anything on that page? Okay. We'll have to have measurable goals. I don't completely understand the baseline for goals here, but we'll have to have measurable goals. That's something that's reasonable to put together. HAP funds will be distributed within 90 days of application, and funds will be dispersed directly to the administrative entity. So it won't be, like a number of state programs are reimbursement based. This, they will give us the full amount of funds that we have 5 years to spend. But again, the final parts of it are collaboration, coordination, commitment. This is just the contact information. What I want to say is what would be really useful, and maybe we could just spend a little bit of time here, just maybe some hand raising. Who's preparing the application? So, because I think we'll have to convene. So I would assume San Benito County, Enrique, you're the point of contact.
For my unit.
Yeah. Monterey County, I don't know if it's social services or
It's actually
housing
going to be
programs.
it's going to be the CAO's office and with coordination with social services and health.
Okay. So we'll have to have some pretty intensive work together, so I'll pass that on, reach out to Anastasia.
Is it one application that includes the county and the COC, or will we be presenting our own application?
Yes, it'll be 3 applications.
Nelly, question, the last round of funding, HEAP had a lot of emphasis of being able to use money for capital improvements. On your list here, you talked about navigation centers or emergency shelters, but the funding can also be used for capital improvements.
If we can use the data to demonstrate need, which I would assume we can. I will say, just as a caveat, one of the things that I observed just personally in this, I guess, close to 4 months in the role, is that we have gaps on both sides of the equation, or resource shortages that cause tension on both sides, both on the shelter side and also on the service side in terms of outreach. And that causes lots of tensions in our system, having both those gaps. But yes, you can fund the gap. I think that's it.
Okay, questions on this item for Elliot? Anybody? Overview? I just want to emphasize how important it is for us to, when this comes around and we apply, to be able to, I guess, going into this next round of funding is to try to maximize it and use it in a very smart and strategic way. So on behalf of our county and San Benito County, we're showing our COC is really doing the best, being very thoughtful on what projects we fund, but also that we're trying to meet these milestones or benchmarks that we can show that the money is being put to good use in our county. And I think if we all approach it that way, I think we're gonna be real diligent on how we use these funds and hopefully address our homelessness crisis in our counties.
I think our history of working together will be important.
Yes.
What will the role of the Coalition of Homeless Services Providers be? I mean, because the COC is actually separate from that, for the sort of the larger body. Will they will they be working on projects and analyses that collectively will feed into this application?
Okay, so yes, the Coalition of Homeless Services Providers, actually, we're kind of developing, have a number of requirements around further digging into data. An example, which I don't think I've shared with this group that I probably should, is a racial disparity analysis that we did as part of the Continuum care application. So some of that information that will say, how is our system working? Yes, we'll be developing that to the extent that we do have the data to do that.
So, obviously, there's an application, we have systems, but with our guests here today, it's clear that we're not doing this in a vacuum, that this is affecting real people, real lives, real situations. And I just hope that whatever we construct, whatever we put together, it's actually something that reflects real change for people's lives that are really being affected by homelessness, as opposed to something that appears mostly structural. I realize that there's a downstream application there with people, but I think it's been a real useful coincidence that this is being talked about when we have these guests here today, and I think that needs to be really strongly considered.
And one of the things I think that we'll be able to also rely on through the process is the community input we received for the HEAP application. That was very valuable. Kind of at that point we went through HEAP, we had very pressing issues around shelter. But much of that, the voice from the community that we talked to was also around the service side, which I kind of ties into what your question is.
We got Mayor LaBear and then a question later.
So, going through this and hearing the presentation is, what I'm kind of seeing is, I would expect the COC on their allocations to look at more of the implementation of the services portions. And in a city like mine, there was something that I found that we needed, and that was being provided through one of the providers, that I would look at putting in a request through that. And I don't know what the county's position is, but I would assume the county would then look at those other mechanisms, maybe the structures, as you mentioned, and providing a more well-balanced approach to all of these different things. And I think the HEAP process we went through was very instructive on how, when we have a short deadline, we got to get things in place, and we were able to knock that out, get that funding in place, and have more flexibility within all of our passions for each jobs that we do. So I'm very encouraged that we do have another opportunity for some additional funding to tack on to what people be providing.
And I think one of the kind of important challenges, and something that we kind of, as it kind of progresses over a few months, is one, kind of at the obligation side of the equation. How do we make sure that we're coordinated, don't double fund, or if there's a priority that comes out from the NOFA from the COC, how does that relate to the NOFA from the counties, or what the counties are doing, so we don't duplicate it. That will be very important, so that we can do just what you're saying, which is make sure that we're covering the right bases as effectively as we can.
Next question.
Yes, in 2015, we did a lot of work on the ground, and with Armenta and Jay Parker, they offered a state of emergency. The board directed all county to work with us as a state advisory committee. To be effective in our process and comprehensive, what I would like to request is that we create a steering committee of people from diverse populations and backgrounds. So especially with the mandated care changes that are going to be coming from behavioral health themselves, and the definition of gravely disabled and possibility of people being incarcerated and mandated to care, that you create a steering committee that deals with harm reduction, that deals with access to service, because it's not just where people live, but because of the displacements, there's safety that they would be mandated to carry. And my concern is to be able to have a steering committee that can inform and drive and with participatory research from the communities that are involved so that we can have a safeguard so that individuals are not put in institutions because they're termed as gravely disabled from the state.
Thank you. Thank you for your suggestions. Anyone else on this? Any other comments?
I have
See, yes.
I think that wherever you guys go with this, like she's saying, a steering committee, you guys need to have the impacted voices. You guys hear from the residents, you hear from the businesses, you hear from these nonprofits that money's funneled into. But the needs are of these people. These people's voices need to be heard. And that's what I expressed at the League of Cities if you guys were there. We need to have a voice of the people in these communications.
Well taken, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, that concludes this report on this item. Look forward to bringing this back early next year. We got a few more items, they're very quick ones, informational items.
Yeah.
You have to take off, that's good. Thank you for being here.
Next one is
monitoring of HEAP HUD contracts.
So one of the things that came up at one of our meetings several months ago is just concerns about drawdowns from the HUD COC contracts, and are we monitoring them? We're taking a step further, and we're actually putting into place a full COC contract monitoring process, and Derek and Nicole will present our system performance monitoring grant. This part of the conversation is related to the HUD COC contracts, although it closely relates to what we're doing with.
Yeah, so as we've received feedback on from this council, create a monitoring plan for HUD contracted projects. So we created this, I believe, a really extensive and thorough monitoring plan that includes a lot of different tools, timelines, and action items. The main purpose of this plan is to establish some targets that would help us to look at funding-related indicators and measurements that, and also stay in compliance with HUD in general. So, monitor performance, evaluating outcomes. So you have all of the tool in these packets here, all the things that you can do for this plan. And if you're wondering what measures and indicators we use to make this tool, it's on the very back of the plan. So mostly coming from 24 CFR 578, fair housing laws, and COC notices. Okay.
So the process that we have, just really quickly, there's going to be an agency evaluation tool that's going to look at agency policies to make sure they're in accordance with COC guidelines, and on-site client file reviews, so those will be looking at physical client files from HMIS. The self-assessment to see where our agencies are and how they feel that they're doing within the COC world. And then an HMIS security check, which is something that we have to do, will also be happening here. And that's definitely where Derek is to see as our guide. And the next thing that we'll talk about is our timeline. So we're hoping to start in March. We've sent out invitations for initial site visits so we can get to know the agencies a little better. Derek and I are new, so we haven't been around as long as we want, and we want to get to know you all. So our plan is to do things in cohorts, so sections. So our first cohort will start in March, go to April, and then from April to May, May to June.
An average about 3 to 4 projects per cohort. That's what we're looking at. And it's going to be about a 40-day process, so about 10 days before the beginning of the month, we'll be contacting the organizations, they'll be sending them what they'll need to complete before we go do the monitoring, and then we'll continue 15 days of file reviews. I'll be on the site looking at HMIS data, security checks, as I mentioned, and then we'll be doing some follow-up calls and technical assistance plan. Technical assistance can include discussions, reference to other trainings, personal trainings that I can do with CARS or HMIS, general feedback and referrals from experts.
As part of this plan, we are also have this section on remedial actions and sanctions. So we will be working, the plan is to work with our agencies, not to be wagging fingers at them. So we will, for each of these, every organization will have 3 opportunities to complete their corrective action plans, respond to our requests, things like that. If they do not, then we will start imposing sanctions, although the severity of those, I guess, will vary, I suppose.
It might end up being a little bit like what I used to tell my kids. If you don't get it right, I'm going to count to 10. And this is what happens next, I'm going to count to 10 again. But I think we'll have to, hopefully we'll get there. Because, as I look around the room at our partners, I know that we all have the exact same issue.
And then since this is such a long, a lot that goes into this plan, we wanted to have an evaluation once a year from the organizations to tell us how we did, how we might improve on the plan, and make it better as we move forward.
And what we will be doing is creating sort of just like an aggregate of all the results and sharing them out to the public. There will be specific agencies and people that are allowed to see more specific things. So when we post to the public, we won't have specific agency information. Again, it'll just be an aggregate. But this council, the CHSP board, the Oversight committee, and the Monterey County's departments that are, so Department of Social Services and San Benito's Health and Human Services, they will also have access to more detailed information about how specific agencies are doing, if they so choose. And that's that.
All right. First of all, thank you on your hard work. This is important technical work that needs to happen, and thank you for being part of our team. We certainly value working to carry this out. Comments or questions on this? Anybody? See none? Thank you very much for your report. We'll leave that accepted. We're moving on to HEAP update and funded partner status reports. And this is now where we had asked for updates on making sure contracts that we gave with that state HEAP money that is being spent, so that we're not at the end of months down the road, we saw that there was a lot of unused money. So this is that time.
And I'm going to pass the floor over to our partners, but just to give an introductory statement. Our contract kind of finalization period was pretty much through August. A couple of contracts took longer, although with a clear understanding that you can start your program planning and expenditures earlier, that the contracts are retroactive to an earlier date. Kind of the other caveat to keep in mind is that trying to figure out the right way to put it, there, in the provider community, there is employment instability. Much of that having to do with, issues that we all struggle with, well, not we all struggle with, but certainly many struggle with, which is compensation to pay a living wage, other opportunities. And so the stability of the workforce has also been somewhat of a challenge. I just want to preface that because I've heard that from a few providers, and I recognize that to be a true statement, so I don't want them to feel awkward if that's an issue. And let's see, should we start with Robin? Just because.
Sure. So I have 2 reports. I'll be brief. I'll start with the Salinas Valley Street Outreach Program, which is a team of 4 people providing street outreach to unaccompanied homeless youth from North County down to the far reaches of South County. We were in contract, as Elliot mentioned, August, maybe even ours might have gone into September. We hired 4 people rather quickly. The 4th one we just hired about a week ago, but the first 3 went rather quickly. And we actually began operating October 1st and are fully staffed as of last week. We have fabulous employees. All 4 are college graduates. All 4 have a BA or an MA. All 4 are bilingual, bicultural. All 4 have experience working with youth and in some social service capacity. So I think it's a real crackerjack team, and we're going to have a lot of fun, I think, with this this group of individuals doing outreach in Salinas Valley. They got the office completely furnished and with equipment and furnished, office furniture, equipment, all the IT, technology taken care of. We still have to purchase 2 vans. They're gathering the information to make recommendations by Friday. They have also procured outreach materials, everything from consumables like water, granola bars, that sort of thing, to hygiene products and bags to put things in. They will work in teams of 2, so for safety, and they will carry cell phones. They've done the HMIS training, they've got their licenses for that. So, I mean, we're just really hitting the ground running with that team. And they are doing community outreach to other providers, to police departments, to churches, the food bank. They know where all the community food banks are, so they've developed their routes for outreach and are using that to create a schedule, so they'll have regular days when they're going to regular places in their outreach. So that's just working out beautifully. And then once they get the vans, which should be by the end of November, they'll actually begin to do the street outreach part of this. So that really hasn't happened yet, with one exception. They did do the Chinatown block party, and they represented that program very well and made lots of connections at that event. The other program that we received funding for is the Peninsula Shelter. The Peninsula Shelter has a working name since it's located on the corner of Noche Buena and Olympia. Our joint committee chose the name Casa de Noche Buena. So right now that's being received fairly well in the community, and pardon?
I like it.
You like it? Good. Okay, still approval. We'll resume our formal community outreach in early January. We were going to start in December, and the consensus was with the holidays, it's probably not a great time to begin to restart our formal community engagement process, but the intention is there and it will begin in January. We are about 3 months behind in that program for a variety of reasons, but we have what appears to be the final plans from the architect. The committee will look at it again very soon. And then we will be going out to bid in January. That's about 3 months off. We were going to be going out to bid in October. And we were going to begin construction in January, and now we're looking at construction beginning in April. And with a 9-month timeline, it looks like we'll be, instead of opening July 1, we'll be opening October 1. So while that is a delay, there's no concern for funding there because we will still be operational in the 2021 year. And we received 3 months or 4 months of funding for operations, and they'll be from October to June, that's what, 9 months? So we will be able to spend 4 months or 3 months of funding that we received for operations well before the June 30, 2021 deadline. And we have a long-range funding committee that's been working on the ongoing funding strategies for the viability of the shelter. And Dan said he would participate on that. And for the municipality portion of that fundraising plan, planning begins this Friday. Well, it started a couple of Fridays ago, but then the whole team meets again this Friday. And we'll be launching those efforts starting in January. And that's my report.
Can I just add one thing just to make sure everyone knows that the shelter in the peninsula will be for women and families with children?
Correct. And there will be potentially 2 respite beds. So, and I should have brought these, but I didn't. But I have 3 left over from the meeting I went to yesterday. I'll pass them around, and if anyone wants one, just come up to me after the meeting. And although I do have to leave right at 3 because I have a meeting in Salinas at 8:30. But contact me or come up to me after the meeting, and I'll make sure I email you some of these.
Let's go with the other reports we need to quickly look at, trying to get out in 20 minutes.
Well, I can briefly provide an update. The Department of Social Services, in cooperation with the city of Salinas, we applied for funding so that the shelter, which was scheduled to end at the end of June, would be able to provide shelter, continue providing shelter for families and single mothers and women as spaces available and raise who is our subcontractor, can probably add something. But the shelter has been operating successfully. We have been operating at capacity ever since July. So we are really excited and looking forward to the permanent shelter build, which I know that Dave is excited to give you an update on as far as what is forthcoming in that regard. So any questions, I'm glad to answer, but the warming shelter is running successfully.
And I would add, the Board of Supervisors, I think we funded, I think 150, if not more, to fund shower facilities with six stalls. It's a portable unit with 6 showers. One is for ADA accessible, but it includes towel service, shampoo, soaps, and things like that. And then the security, we need some additional security to help us staff that properly. But that comes out of our cannabis money to fund that. So that was from the Board of Supervisors, so that, because we know this shelter is going to take 18 months or so to do. In the meantime, we have this critical need for the residents of the shelter, and I think that's going to be greatly appreciated.
Right, and also, I think Elsa, they are helping us with getting some of those showers also. And we have something to add.
I think he touched upon it in terms of adding access to showers at our year-round shelter. And we were able to use whole person care dollars to be able to fund that.
Right.
So again.
So wasn't cannabis, it was whole person?
Yes.
I was thinking that, yes.
It's still county money, it's still county money. But I mean, I think this is where, you know, if you have ideas for how we can maximize those whole person care dollars, you need to reach into the health department. We've been able, the state's been very flexible with us in terms of allowing us to make revisions to our existing scope and budget, where we've been able to, you know, buy showers, which may or may not be 100% for whole person care enrollees, but the showers will be. We're also able to fund attorneys to come into our primary care clinics to help our patients with any legal challenges they may have with respect to leave, lost wages, with rent, evictions, etc. So the state's being very flexible with us in terms of how we can spend those whole person care dollars.
And the residents are so excited that they'll be able to access showers because the majority of the families and persons residing in the shelter are employed. And of course, the children are going to school. So to be able to take care of their hygiene needs is going to be just amazing for them. They're very, very excited. They're so appreciative of the funding provided by you, by the county, by the health department, and it's all working together very well.
Thank you, Gloria. We got an update on the shelters?
Sure.
I'll
be concise.
They were starting to recognize.
I'm Dave Pratt, I'm County Monterey, RMA. I'll do it concisely by the W's, who, what, where, when, why, and then I'll add how. The who is City of Salinas, close partnership with the County of Monterey. Many of the partners that we have here and many of the stakeholders that provided input to the project being our regional emergency shelter it's on county property. It's in the City of Salinas city limits, and so we're certainly working closely, and we'll continue to work closely with our jurisdiction. Let's see, where did I miss? The when. A lot of things have happened in the last 18 months. Going back at least 18 months, the city and the county have partnered and committed to delivering this emergency shelter, continued services for the warming shelter, and then in the future we'll see about the next steps, the next progression for homeless housing. We've worked very hard over the last 6 to 8 months to get a successful HEAP application pieced together. We were awarded generously by the coalition and a leadership council for a project to deliver the emergency shelter there right in Salinas. Some of the items, some of the things that have happened, some of the milestones are very recently, in August of 2019, we went out to bid, public bid. We closed those bids in October, and we received 4 very responsive bids. The nice part about that is that we had a lot of local response. So we had 4 local contractors that provided bids. We, just yesterday, the Board of Supervisors awarded a contract to, again, one of our local contractors, Allocation Construction Company. They're a known entity to the county. We've done work with them before. So we're pleased to have someone that we've previously worked with. Some of the other milestones that we're about ready to embark on. We'll issue them a notice to proceed in the next couple of days. We'll begin construction that we originally anticipated construction might begin in January. We think it'll begin in December, as in this coming month. We're trying to get a jump on the rainy season. Certainly we'll be ahead of any of the time constraints, the HEAP time constraints, where we will certainly encumber the funds by January 1st, and then looking out toward the end of 2020 or the spring of 2021, we'll complete this project and make the emergency shelter operational. And certainly we're aware of the final deadline of June 30th, 2021 to expend those funds.
A report, questions?
Thank you. A question, maybe I missed it. What's the total capacity, and is it only for individuals or also inclusive of families?
Families, men, women, all of the above. The capacity, this is a ground-up project. We're going to start on a patch of dirt. Again, it's on county property. And we're going to put a pre-engineered building that will have a capacity of 100 beds and numerous common areas, kitchen, activity spaces, program spaces. It's a 16,000-foot pre-engineered building.
What's the square footage of the warming shelter?
It's about 8,600 square feet.
So this will also have, as Dave was saying, it will have a kitchen, and there are some other amenities that will come about as more funding is available. Is that correct, Dave?
Most certainly, as funding becomes available, the space is certainly there on the property. There's program space within this facility to do things like computer terminals, employment services, as those programs are rolled into the operation.
Okay, let's go. Board questions? Any other board questions?
Oh, no, we have other reports.
Wait, on this, we have some questions on this one, the folks in the audience. But I'm going board members first, okay, then members of the audience, quickly on this item?
So real quickly, I just wanted to add that the success of programs like that, it's my personal experience and my experience dealing with people in homeless situations, that it's not so much the way that the program looks as much as like the meat and bones to the success of that. It's going to be in who's managing it, who's working there, how the people are treated, the rules and regulations to getting in there, how much personal information you're requiring from the residents, whether they feel like you're there to help them or, track them, get their personal information. There's a lot that goes into the success of this program, and very little of it is going to be what it looks like. So I just want to point that out.
So I can answer that very briefly. I know we're short on time, but the contractor for the warming shelter has not been determined as of yet. There will be a RFP, or what is it for building? RFQ. There will be a request put out for a contractor to operate the shelter. And we do intend to incorporate feedback from those who will be utilizing shelter services. So it hasn't been finalized, but we will keep that in mind as far as the particular needs. And as Dave mentioned, there will be other amenities as funding becomes available. We're just glad to be getting this built.
Thank you, Gloria, for the clarification. We got first person in the back, and then here in front. Yes.
I just have a quick question. Is it going to be like single occupancy like rooms, or are you guys just throwing a bunch of people in that one big giant room? Without like triage and separation, because we know that in homeless community, we do have sex offender statuses, and we do have children, and we do have mental health, and we do have this variety of things that come into shelters.
We received a lot of input from some providers who are familiar with the operation and operating structures like this. And it will be laid out in separate room style and with the focus on, somewhat segregating the families from the singles to a very large degree.
And that's kind of how our temporary shelter is kind of it's big enough where we could provide different spaces for folks in different situations. In regards to sex offenders, they're not allowed to be at our current shelter because of children, nor would they be allowed at this new shelter for safety reasons.
I'm very displaced. I'm disabled. I'm a widow. I'm hearing everything about these shelters, but how about it now? I live in the park, Shores Gardens Park. I did, I graduated, I did whole person care, I put applications everywhere, you guys. How about now? How about now?
Yes.
Oh, that was my question too. I was saying that's great, yay on the shelter. But what are we supposed to do in the meantime? And again, you said 100 beds. What about the other 900 or so people that are out here? We get harassed by the police department. Our city officials look down at us. Human beings trying to live in a city that doesn't even want us here, but they want the grant money. That's pretty sad because we get treated as if we don't even belong. I lived here over 50 years and I'm being told, try to find another place to live. So if my city can't take care of me, what am I to do? What am I to do? Where am I to go if we kept getting told to go here, go there, but no place safe? And when we do get a tent, because that's about what almost everybody can afford right now, because the housing is very expensive. Again, yay on the shelter, but what about us out here right now?
Thank you. I'm going to take a few more comments. I'm probably going to end after this item because we're losing a corner here. And out of time, I think the other 3 items are informational. They could come to our next month's meeting, Elliot.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's going to finish the last comments. Yes.
It being an emergency shelter instead of warming shelter, will people be able to stay there during the day?
That's a question that we're going to be talking about with our service contract, but that's what it was envisioned from the beginning, so that that would only be a place to stay at night, but they could get services during the day as well. So that's the hope, but that's a conversation that's apart from the construction of this facility.
Like she was saying, what about now? Since we're being bounced around and there is no adequate shelter for everyone that's in this situation, why can't there be like an area where we can pitch a tent and not have to move in 72 hours and actually have some stability until there's an actual, room, shelter, home for us?
Transition housing program is really great for campsites also. It's been done.
Okay, one person at a time. Anyone else that hasn't spoken yet? Wes?
So I was curious, with the 100 beds that are going into the new shelter, how many, are we keeping the one at West Alisal open as well? And then are we?
That will not continue.
So we're just cycling the same people, not 100 people, more like 20 people?
Answer your question. Any other comments? Do we have any other reports from other providers?
We do.
Yes, San Benito County, let's go to.
We have San Benito, HRC, Community Homeless Solutions.
I'll make that. Let's try to make it brief.
I'll do one as brief as I can.
Okay.
So under HEAP, we're funded for a capital project and also a HEAP project and services project. So under the capital project, this is being led by our resource management agency, who has confirmed a consultant that's working in different capital projects, including the HEAP project. So I've been working with this person for couple of months now, so we've secured an architect, so there's an agreement that's been fully executed to look at the architects and the design plans and all that. Tomorrow we have a meeting, walkthrough on the location that we selected, and we're gonna go kind of assess it, kind of, moving this project forward to determine, the perhaps the size of the scope, the general layout, number of units that you can fit in this place and so forth. So that's gonna happen tomorrow. There's also two other proposals that we're working with. One is a topographic survey, to do a topographic survey on the physical features of the location that we identified, and also geotechnical services. So we anticipate that drilling for that, because this location is within certain proximity of the fault line, so we need to do some further tests. So we anticipate some type of drilling, and that to moving forward if weather permits next month, and also to do the topo work, starting next month. So that's kind of the update for this. Once this gets going, we will be going to board of supervisors and get a contract and bidding process for contractor. So that's on the capital project. So under the youth services, we've contracted with a nonprofit organization that's going to be managing this program. They have selected their program manager, and they're looking at other staff to work with this population to do case management, assessment, implementing services, permanent housing and stuff like that for the younger population, 18 to 24 years of age. We also applied for rental assistance, so we have a supervisor, the eligibility worker already meeting with clients, so there's a number of applications that we've submitted. We just confirmed 2 recently, and the requisitions for rental assistance for starting next month have been submitted yesterday, so that's moving forward. And the last program is the outreach services team. We've identified a program manager that's already been working on this program to start planning the activities, going through the hiring process. So this position has been closed. We got 11 applications. We're gonna they're gonna be screened by admin, give the names and schedule the appointment, the interview, coming up next month. So that is moving forward as well. I've also met with our sheriff's department, because part of the outreach team will include 2 social workers and a deputy sheriff. We feel that a deputy sheriff could bring an element of different interactions, but instead of being more on the kind of the whole goal is to build rapport and trust and so forth. So that's kind of the approach, and they have identified a sheriff that is within the unit that is going to be focused for this project. So there's still going to be more planning moving forward with this project. So that's a brief update on our program.
Thank you, sir. Okay, let's go.
Jessica Terrace, Housing Resource Center. We received a $310,000 HEAP grant, $300,000 battery housing, $10,000 landlord mitigation. As Ellie had mentioned, we did have run into the problem with staffing for this program, but I'm pleased to say that we have brought on staff that we will start accepting referrals and working with clients this month, and we have started targeting landlords for use of the landlord mitigation funds. And we have no concerns about fully expending our portion of our grant by the end of our contract.
We look forward to getting a report how the work is going next time.
Yeah, we received $260,000 for HEAP and to repair 14 units. We had some roadblocks in the way, but we finally got our agreement with the U.S. Department of Housing and Human Services. So that's all been squared away, and I can say that we're now in progress in our repair. So we are probably a couple of months behind, but I think talking to the contractors, they can probably do it within the time frame that we had kind of laid out. So I think we're pretty good.
Renovating 14 units.
14 units, yeah, for permanent housing.
Okay. Thank you. Next.
Okay, and I am Gina, the Associate Director with CISO. We have been doing the HEAP program for the last 3 months, 3.5. We are confident that we're going to spend all the money, hopefully before even June. As today, we have enrolled a total of 13 individuals into the program, and we have housed 3 of them. Again, one of the barriers that we're facing is that there is not a lot of housing inventory, and there is no Section 8 vouchers, and the CHSP vouchers have been put on hold. So right now, the property managers are saying they don't have a stable source of income. We have to really do long-term rental assistance, and we're seeking additional support to keep on going with the rental assistance. But again, one other main leader they were facing is the lack of housing in Monterey.
Supervisor Leah, if I could just add one thing to Cecil. I believe I owe Jill and I owe Cecil a tamale lunch because they were the first organization that had served and housed.
We'll get our.
Just let me know the day and we will be there.
Other provider reports? None?
Actually, can I just really briefly touch on one thing? I know it's late, but just
Wrap up, please.
let you know the 100-day youth challenge, challenge on youth homelessness. That's an opportunity that kind of one of our new local residents who's very involved in the homeless world, Marty Fleetwood, brought to my attention. And so we're seeing if we can get into that 100-day challenge for youth programs. It's going to be a lot of work for Community and Human Services. My guess is behavioral health, Michael's there, social services, and the coalition. To do a 100-day, do something quick, but the value of it is it gives us a short pipeline to get an expansion grant for youth services in our continuum of care funding and increase our annual window. That's good news.
Thank you. With that, we're going to end this meeting. The other two items, public messaging and card evaluation for our next meeting. All right? Welcome to adjourn our meeting. Thank you everybody for your time. Appreciate it.